It, I think, taught me how I love. And what's the difference between loving and taking care of people, and what's necessary, and what grown-ups should and shouldn't do for one another.
The world hailed her as the Queen of New York, a symbol of luxury and Manolo Blahnik shoes worth thousands of dollars. But behind the glamorous facade of Sex and the City lies a raw truth that Hollywood has skillfully hidden for decades. Can you believe that before becoming a fashion icon, Sarah Jessica Parker was a child growing up in houses with the electricity cut off in the middle of winter, having to sacrifice her childhood to scrape by for survival? Before finding true happiness, she spent her youth fighting to save Iron Man Robert Downey Jr. from the depths of addiction. And what is the truth behind the shocking rift between these sisters in Hollywood? From ashes to eternal diamonds, this is not just a private matter, but a journey filled with tears of a woman who dared to walk on the thorny path. If you're ready to uncover the untold corners hit, like on this video, leave a comment to share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can reveal the most secret files together. Let's begin. In the minds of millions of women around the world, Sarah Jessica Parker is not a mere mortal. She is an idea. She is the soul of Manhattan. She is Carrie Bradshaw, the woman who struts in thousands of dollars Manolo Blahnik heels, living in a world filled with neon lights, cosmopolitan cocktails, and dramatic romantic entanglements. But there is a harsh truth that the glitz and glamour of Hollywood has skillfully concealed for decades. Before Sarah Jessica Parker became a symbol of luxury, she was a child who never knew the taste of abundance. Before she became the Queen of New York, she was just a little girl shivering through the harsh winters of poverty-stricken Ohio, where electricity was a luxury and darkness was a constant companion. They say diamonds are made under pressure. But for Sarah, she wasn't a diamond by birth. She was a lump of coal that had to set itself ablaze through the fires of poverty, rejection, and unimaginable pressures in order to shine. And today, we won't be talking about glamorous dresses. We'll be talking about the scars that shaped a legend. Let's turn back the clock to March 25, 1965. In the town of Nelsonville, Ohio, a working-class town covered in coal dust and weariness, Sarah's cry greeted the world. There were no silver spoons, no velvet luxuries. The world welcomed her with the cold that seeped through the thin wooden walls. Her family was a typical picture of the poverty of the time. But the greatest pain didn't come from an empty stomach. It came from the heartbreak. In 1968, when Sarah was just 3 years old, her world shattered for the first time. Her parents divorced. In the fragile memory of a child, the departure of her father wasn't just the absence of a figure, but the disappearance of a sense of security. Her mother, Barbara, a strong yet weary woman, had to brace herself to protect her young children. Then she remarried Paul Forster, a kind-hearted man, though also poor, bringing along 4 children of his own. And so, in a dilapidated, cramped house, 8 people had to learn how to survive. Imagine this: 8 mouths to feed and meager wages. Sarah once confessed in a rare moment of vulnerability, "We never knew if the lights would be on tomorrow or if the heater would work." This wasn't the romanticized poverty of the movies. It was raw poverty. It was Christmas holidays passing in complete silence, no gifts, no candles, just the sighs of the adults and the anxious eyes of the children. It was the constant moving, fleeing, overdue bills crammed into old trucks to get to an even more dilapidated place. Sarah grew up with an obsession with scarcity. She became a child so well-behaved it was heartbreaking. She learned not to ask for anything, learned to shrink herself, because she knew how expensive survival could be. But fate always has its brutal and strange twists. While other children her age were busy chasing butterflies, enjoying carefree afternoons, running under the warm sun, Sarah was thrown straight into the ruthless machinery of a career. Not for the glamour, not for the dream of fame. She took the stage for a much more raw, reasoned survival. For the Parker family, her artistic talent was not seen as a gift to be appreciated, but as the only lifeline in an ocean of poverty ready to swallow up their family of 8. Look at the schedule of a girl not yet 10 years old. At 8, her feet were bloodied in the hard-toed ballet slippers of the dance studio. At 9, she threw herself into studying voice and acting. By 11, that skinny little girl was facing endless lines of auditions in New York alone. These were the literal meat markets of the entertainment industry, where children were scrutinized like products on display. Can you imagine the weight pressing down on those small shoulders? While other children arrived at auditions in expensive dresses, with perfectly styled hair and parents by their side offering encouragement, Sarah often stood there alone. She wore hand-me-down clothes carefully ironed by her mother, clutching a sheet of music that had become crumpled from being folded and unfolded countless times. Each audition wasn't a game. It was a fight for survival, a battle to pay the electricity bill, to buy milk to keep the house from being foreclosed. New York, through the eyes of 14-year-old Sarah, was not the city of pink dreams. It was a monstrous, cold, and ruthless beast. She left the comfort of her family's embrace, starting a life of wandering between cramped apartments and cheap boarding rooms with other struggling artists. She attended the professional children's school, but in reality, her life was far from what one would call a school in the traditional sense. It was the mornings when she woke up while the sky was still pitch black, dragging herself to the subway station, filled with the smell of mildew and danger. The rattling subway cars became her classroom. She completed her homework under the flickering dim lights of backstage mirrors while waiting for her turn to perform. Her meals were more of a necessity than a comfort. The half-eaten sandwich from yesterday's lunch, a bruised apple crushed in her bag, or a cheap cup of soup just to warm her numb hands in the harsh winter of the East Coast. How many nights had she slept in her coat because the heating system in her shabby room was broken? How many times had she gone hungry just to save a few pennies to send back to her mother? She never dared to speak of it. And the greatest pain wasn't the hunger, but the rejection. Casting directors rarely gave her a second glance. They spoke harsh, unforgiving words to her that no child should ever hear. You're not tall enough. Your eyes are too close together. You're not attractive enough. You don't have star quality. Hundreds of refusals, hundreds of doors slammed shut. But Sarah couldn't afford to give up. She learned a bitter lesson very early. Don't ask for too much, just work. Because behind her, there was a whole family watching, and weakness was a luxury she couldn't afford. Time passed in relentless struggle. She took supporting roles, toured with companies, slept in cheap motels, living like an adult in the body of a child. But it was those years struggling at the bottom of society that forged a different kind of Sarah Jessica Parker. The year 1982 marked a turning point. At 17, after countless failures, she landed the role of Patty Green in the sitcom Square Pegs. Then in 1984, she shone brightly alongside Kevin Bacon in Footloose. For the first time, the world saw her not as a conventionally beautiful Hollywood girl, but as a girl with an unusual beauty, intelligence, humor, and a raw honesty that was almost heartbreaking. That success didn't come from luck. It was paid for with a stolen childhood. It was the hard work, the cold, steel-like resolve forged in those lonely, hunger-filled winter nights, in those solitary subway cars that kept her in the game. Sarah understood a brutal truth about the industry. In Hollywood, talent is just the ticket to the door, but the grit honed through suffering is the only thing that helps you survive when the lights dim. As the doors of her career began to open, as the stage lights started to shine on the young girl from Ohio, it was also the moment Sarah's heart began to feel the rhythm of first love. And fate, with all its irony and cunning design, brought her a love that would stay etched in her soul. A love beautiful and brilliant like fireworks, but its ashes left behind burns that would last a lifetime. It was 1984 on the set of Firstborn. She was 19, pure and full of determination. He was Robert Downey Jr., a young man with large, bright brown eyes, carrying a wild energy and a natural talent that captivated everyone. They fell in love at first sight. Their love wasn't calculated for fame, but rather the collision of two meteors in a Hollywood sky filled with fake stars. They loved each other with the innocent passion of youth, with the harmony of two struggling artists yearning to make their mark in the harsh heart of New York. In the old black and white photos that still survive today, you can see the way Sarah looked at Robert. It wasn't just the gaze of a lover, it was the gaze of reverence, of absolute faith. They shared cold slices of bread in the middle of the night, rehearsed lines together until dawn in their cramped apartments. They were two penniless kids, rich only in dreams, believing that as long as they had each other, they could take on the world. But Robert, behind his charming exterior and deadly smile, carried demons within. A hereditary darkness, a chaos in his mind that simple love could not soothe. Drugs and stimulants began to creep into their lives, not with the crash of a storm, but quietly and venomously, like a toxic smoke. What started as a series of parties turned into dependence and eventually into an abyss. Sarah, the girl who had learned to shoulder the responsibility of her entire family since she was 8, once again unknowingly donned the ill-fitting role of protector. She was not just a girlfriend. She became a mother, a nurse, a manager, and tragically an unwilling warden for the man she loved. For 7 long years, remember, 7 years is the best part of a young woman's life. Sarah fought an unequal battle to wrest Robert from the grip of death. Imagine the endless nights in New York. While the entire city had fallen into sleep, Sarah still sat huddled on an old sofa, eyes fixed on the window ears, straining to catch the sound of footsteps. She waited for the sound of the key turning in the lock, yet at the same time she feared it. She feared seeing him return no longer himself. She feared those 3 a.m. phone calls. She feared the sound of police sirens, feared the hospital, and feared the death notice she knew was hanging over his head every single day. Robert later admitted, "I was a selfish addict, and Sarah was the one who tried to keep me alive, fed, and on time for work." She washed his clothes, cleaned up the mess left behind after his drunken rages, and hid his dark secrets from the media and the public. She cried in the bathroom so he couldn't hear. then stepped out with a reassuring smile, taking his trembling hands and saying, "It'll be okay, love." But deep down, Sarah was slowly dying. She loved him so much that she forgot how to love herself. She became the anchor holding Robert's ship afloat in the storm, only to be dragged along to exhaustion herself. Love, no matter how great, is sometimes powerless against the demons of addiction and mental illness. She came to a harsh truth. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, nor can you save yourself. In 1991, the final limit was broken. Sarah Jessica Parker, at the age of 26, had to make the hardest decision of her life to leave in order to survive. The breakup wasn't marked by shouting or crashing things. It happened in the silence of despair. She packed a small suitcase, gathered the shattered pieces of 7 years of youth, and walked out of the apartment filled with memories yet overflowing with tears. She didn't leave him because she stopped loving him. She left because she knew that if she stayed one more day, they would both sink into the abyss. She chose life for herself. The steps she took that day were heavy, carrying the pain of having to amputate a part of herself to prevent the rot from spreading. Later, when reflecting on that stormy time, Sarah said something that made millions of hearts tighten. "I learned how to distinguish between loving someone and taking care of a person who is falling apart." Those things are not the same, and they should never be. Robert Downey Jr. later overcame his addiction and became a superstar, but he never forgot the girl from his past. He always held her in the highest regard, calling her a holy heart. But for Sarah, that love was the most painful lesson of maturity. It took away her innocence, but in return it forged a resilient heart, teaching her to cherish peace, the very peace she later found and protected at all costs with Matthew Broderick. And then in 1998, a bombshell named Sex and the City exploded on HBO, its aftershocks so powerful that they shook the very foundations of pop culture. Sarah Jessica Parker stepped into the shoes of Carrie Bradshaw, and television history was forever rewritten. But hold on for a moment. Don't just see Carrie Bradshaw as a character in a script. She was a revolution. Before Carrie, women on television were often confined to safe stereotypes: the dutiful wife, the devoted mother, or the sweet girl next door. Carrie shattered all of that. For the first time, millions of women saw themselves on screen, raw and real. An independent woman, good at making money but spending it all on shoes, craving sex, but also yearning for a classic romantic love, smart, but constantly making silly mistakes in relationships. Sarah didn't just act. She poured her heart and soul into the character, transforming Carrie into a virtual friend for women across the globe. Prestigious awards began pouring in like a flood: 2 Emmys, 4 Golden Globes. Her salary skyrocketed to unimaginable heights, propelling her from a mid-level actress to one of the highest-paid stars in television history, with a staggering $3 million per episode. Sarah became the goddess of New York, a fashion icon where anything she wore would sell out in an instant. But my friends, there is an unbreakable law of the universe. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow it casts. Do you know the true cost of that glittering crown? It's the destruction of the body and the torment of the mind. Let's talk about the body first. To maintain the flawless image of Carrie, Sarah had to work with an intensity that ordinary people simply couldn't endure. For 6 seasons, her schedule stretched to 16, even 18 hours a day. She arrived on set before the city had woken up and returned home when the sanitation workers had already started their night shifts. And those shoes. Those gorgeous Manolo Blahniks, those sky-high Jimmy Choos, which became the symbol of the show, were in fact tools of torture for her feet. Sarah had to run, jump, and walk miles each day on 10-12 centimeter stilettos. She wore them so much that the structure of her foot bones was permanently deformed. Doctors later said that her feet lost their natural cushioning due to the immense pressure over such a long period. But every time the cameras rolled, she still had to smile, still had to walk gracefully as if floating on air, hiding the excruciating pain deep in her bones. However, the physical pressure was nothing compared to the brutality of the media. At a time when the internet was beginning to explode and tabloids were on the rise, Sarah Jessica Parker became the target of a relentless and dehumanizing attack on her appearance. If you agree with the challenges Sarah Jessica Parker has faced, leave a 1 in the comments. If you don't agree, feel free to leave a 0. Enjoy the video and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support us. Every interaction from you is the motivation we need to keep bringing you inspiring and thought-provoking stories. While the world hailed Carrie Bradshaw as a style goddess, the real Sarah was being dissected. Maxim magazine, a publication aimed at men, once conducted a vile poll and declared her the unsexiest woman alive. Imagine the humiliation of that. A woman standing at the peak of her career, admired by millions, was publicly degraded by a faceless crowd for her nose, her long face, her bony-veined hands. They called her horse face. They compared her to inanimate objects. They scrutinized every wrinkle, every small imperfection. Sarah wasn't made of steel. She was a sensitive woman. There were days when she had to curl up in the cramped dressing room, holding the magazine that had just vilified her, struggling to swallow her tears so her makeup wouldn't smudge. She would ask herself, "Why do they hate me so much? What did I do wrong other than aging and working hard?" She came to a bitter realization about the nature of fame. Celebrity is like a fierce storm. It can lift you to the skies, granting you power and wealth, but it is also ready to crush your self-esteem into the mud at any moment. It is a glittering golden cage, where you are admired but also trapped by the judgment of the entire world. And it was in that stifling golden cage that Sarah Jessica Parker had to learn how to build herself a mental armor. She didn't retaliate, didn't lash out. She chose to hold her head high, work harder, and prove that true beauty wasn't found in the shallow standards set by the men writing the articles, but in the inner strength of a woman who dared to live as herself despite all the gossip. And you know what? In Hollywood, no storm is more relentless and destructive than the storm of human judgment. For 2 decades, the world believed in a modern-day fairy tale that the 4 women of Sex and the City were soul sisters, bonded by an eternal friendship. On screen, they laughed together, cried together, shared expensive lunches and their deepest secrets. But when the cameras stopped rolling and the studio lights dimmed, a cold and harsh reality began to take shape. It was the fractured, scarred relationship between Sarah Jessica Parker and Kim Cattrall, the fiery Samantha Jones. We won't sit here to judge who was right or wrong, because in every conflict, the truth is always distorted by each person's perspective. But this fallout is a painful testament to one truth. When fame, money, and egos collide, even the strongest of bonds can shatter like glass. It didn't start with an explosion, but with tiny, almost invisible cracks. It began with contract negotiations behind closed doors, with the massive pay disparity between the lead star and the co-stars, with the feeling of being overshadowed and disrespected. Those frustrations weren't addressed, but accumulated over the years, simmering beneath the glamorous facade of the red carpet, turning the set into a cold battlefield of silent cold wars. The climax of the tragedy, the moment when the velvet curtain was finally ripped apart, occurred in 2018. It was when Kim Cattrall's brother suddenly passed away. Sarah, as a colleague who had been by her side for 15 years, with the instinct of a woman who always wanted to heal publicly, sent her condolences on social media. She thought it was a gesture of kindness, of civility, but she was wrong. In response to that, goodwill was a cold, brutal slap, a public rejection that shocked all of Hollywood. Kim Cattrall took to social media, calling out Sarah with the harshest words. "I don't need your love or support. You're not my family. You're not my friend. Stop exploiting my tragedy to paint your good girl image." The world held its breath. The media reveled like vultures over a carcass. Sensational headlines popped up everywhere. But what did Sarah Jessica Parker do? She didn't hold a press conference. She didn't fire back. She didn't hire a lawyer to argue her case. She chose silence. She chose dignity. She understood that in a world full of noise and hatred, the most brutal response is sometimes kindness and absolute silence. She swallowed the pain of humiliation, continued to work, continued to smile in front of the camera. She built a strong inner fortress to protect herself from the venomous arrows. She showed the world that the value of a person is not determined by the words of others, but by how they stand firm in the storm. But life, alas, didn't just take her old friends through hatred. It also stole pieces of her soul in a far more brutal way, death. In 2021, a part of the light in Sarah's life was extinguished forever. Willie Garson, her soulmate, the actor who portrayed Stanford Blatch Carey's beloved gay husband on screen, passed away from the cruel illness of pancreatic cancer. Willie wasn't just a co-star. He was family. He was the one who had known Sarah since they were both young, unknown actors sharing in those disastrous blind dates together. He was the only person on set who could look into Sarah's eyes and know just how exhausted she was without her saying a word. What's most heartbreaking is that Willie hid his illness throughout the filming of the new season of And Just Like That. He performed joyful, humorous scenes while his body was being ravaged by cancer day by day. Only Sarah knows. Imagine her pain having to act carefree and laugh with her closest friend, knowing his time was only measured in days. When Willie took his last breath, Sarah felt as though a part of her own history had died with him. And just as the grief hadn't yet healed in 2022, her stepfather, Paul Forster, passed away as well. The man who had opened his arms to her when her biological father left, the one who drove the old truck to take her to auditions, the one who taught her the lesson of perseverance, was gone forever. These successive losses left vast windswept emptinesses in Sarah's soul. In those moments, the woman with a net worth of $200 million, standing at the peak of fame, admired by the world, suddenly became small and fragile before the inevitable laws of life and death. The tears she shed at the funeral, the times she broke down behind the scenes, were not acting. It is the raw pain of a person who realizes the harshest truth of human existence. No matter how much money you have, no matter how powerful you are, you cannot buy another second, not even a single breath, for those you love. Sarah Jessica Parker had all the glory of the world, but she also had to pay the price with the loneliness of being a survivor amidst permanent goodbyes. After the fierce storms that swept through her youth, after the heartbreaks that left her heart bleeding, the ship called Sarah Jessica Parker finally found the calmest harbor of her life. That harbor was named Matthew Broderick. Their love story didn't begin with the dazzling lightning strikes of passion like with Robert Downey Jr. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't loud, and it wasn't woven into sensational headlines. It came softly, like a breath, gently like a river flowing deep beneath the bustling streets of New York City. They met at a small theater company called Naked Angels. At that time, Sarah still carried the scars of her past, while Matthew was a calm young man with kind eyes. They have been together for nearly 30 years, an unimaginable number, an absolute exception in the harsh marriage grinder of Hollywood, where the vows of forever happiness often last only a few months. But don't mistake that calmness for ease. To keep that flame burning brightly for 3 decades, they had to walk through some dark times together. In 2008, when malicious rumors of Matthew's infidelity exploded across the tabloids, the whole world held its breath, waiting for a divorce of the century. People bet on how long it would take for Sarah to crumble. But what did they do? They closed the door, turned off the TV, and turned back to each other. Matthew was a man who never justified himself in the press. He proved his love with the quietest of actions. He was the one who carefully sewed on each button that had come loose for his wife before she went to an event. He was the one who woke up early to make tea, placing it gently on the vanity so Sarah could sip it as she woke. He was the one who always held her hand tightly and whispered, "We know who we are. We know what the truth is. Let them say whatever they want. That is the love of maturity. No need for flashy diamonds or sports cars. No need for empty proclamations on social media. Just presence." All that matters is knowing that when the whole world turns its back, there is still one person standing there as steadfast as a mountain, ready to be your support. And from that solid foundation, Sarah Jessica Parker of today has risen to become a true symbol of power. At 60, she is no longer the little girl in Ohio fearing the lights going out on cold winter nights. She has transformed into a business mogul, a creator of empires. If you think Sarah is just a pretty face who can act, you are sorely mistaken. She possesses a sharp, astute business mind that's nothing short of remarkable. Look at what she has built. The perfume line Lovely launched in 2005 is not just a beauty product. It became a global phenomenon, raking in hundreds of millions of dollars and paving the way for the celebrity fragrance business trend. Her shoe brand SJP Collection isn't just a name for licensing profit. Sarah herself is involved in every design step, choosing each ribbon, inspecting every stitch. Her company, Pretty Matches, consistently produces works of art that celebrate women. But it doesn't stop there. Sarah is also a brilliant real estate investor. She has a keen eye for spotting beauty in the old and worn. She buys rundown townhouses in West Village, New York, and spends years restoring them, turning piles of rubble into architectural masterpieces worth tens of millions of dollars. Her estimated net worth of over $200 million didn't fall from the sky. It is the result of sweat, intellect, and the strong survival instincts of someone who has tasted the depths of poverty. But what truly commands our admiration for Sarah Jessica Parker is not the balance in her bank account. It's how she handles that wealth. People often say that money changes a person's nature. But for Sarah, money only amplified her inherent goodness. She is one of the rare A-list stars who still keeps her old cars, who still cherishes every piece of clothing in her wardrobe for decades. She teaches her 3 children, James, Wilkie, and twins Tabitha and Marion, a core lesson. Your parents are rich, but you are not. You must work hard to earn your place. She never forgets where she came from. The memories of those impoverished days in Nelsonville remain her moral compass. She donates quietly without fanfare. She supports millions of dollars for children's hospitals, public arts funds, and underfunded libraries. For her, it's not charity. It's a debt of gratitude. She is repaying life for the chance to escape the darkness, and she wants to use her light to illuminate the lives of others. Sarah Jessica Parker, from a little girl wearing hand-me-downs, has become someone who weaves dreams out of pure gold, yet still keeps her bare feet firmly on the ground. And that is the true definition of a queen. Ladies and gentlemen, as the velvet curtain of this story begins to close, as the blinding flashbulbs fade, and as the applause of the crowd vanishes into the void, what do we have left? Looking back at the 6-decade journey of Sarah Jessica Parker, we don't just see the portrait of an A-list movie star. If we only focus on her fame, we miss the most radiant part of this picture. What we are witnessing is the tragic yet inspiring journey of a small person who dared to stand up against the cruel fate laid out for her. Remember where she started. A little girl born in the coal dust and cold of Nelsonville, Ohio. A child raised with the constant shadow of overdue bills and meager meals split 7 ways. By all sociological standards, she should have sunk into the cycle of poverty, repeating the hard life of her parents. But no, Sarah rejected that script. She turned fear into fuel. She transformed hunger into ambition. From a small-town girl crushed by New York, she became the soul, the heartbeat of that very city. From the anguished lover desperately trying to save a soul addicted to despair, she became the fulfilled wife, the devoted mother, the one who holds her own happiness. And more importantly, Sarah Jessica Parker has taught the world a great lesson about beauty. In an industry that worships artificial perfection, where women are molded from the same template, Sarah was ridiculed, criticized, and called unattractive. But she never got a nose job. She never reshaped her face. She never tried to become anyone other than herself. She has proven that beauty is not found in flawless perfection. Beauty is found in confidence, in sharp intellect, in a radiant smile despite the wrinkles of time. She shattered narrow-minded stereotypes, telling millions of women, "You don't need to be beautiful the way they want you to. You just need to shine in your own way." Sarah Jessica Parker is the most living proof of the truth. Scars don't make you ugly. They are the medals of survival. The cracks in the soul are not signs of brokenness, but rather the places where light can seep in. She was the lump of coal that chose to leap into the fire, enduring the immense pressures of life, not to burn into ash, but to transform into an eternal diamond. Tough, sharp, and shining in a way that nothing can obscure. If today you find yourself sitting in darkness, if you feel that your life is stuck poor or lonely, if you feel you're not beautiful enough, not talented enough, not lucky enough, remember that where you start does not define where you'll end up. Your current circumstances are not your final destination. Sarah Jessica Parker has weathered the coldest winters to understand the value of a warm ray of sunshine. She has endured the depths of rejection to truly appreciate the embrace of love. She hasn't just walked in expensive Manolo Blahnik shoes. She's walked on thorns on the broken pieces of dreams through silent tears, and she keeps moving forward. Despite facing countless challenges along the way, she never gave up on her dreams or lost faith in herself. With each role, Sarah Jessica Parker not only portrayed deeply complex characters, but also conveyed messages of strength and self-acceptance. It is through these trials and failures that she has become a symbol of inner strength, teaching us that every step, whether small or large, plays a part in making a difference in life. Her story is not just about the glitz and glamour of Hollywood, but a lesson in resilience in the face of adversity. What impresses you most about this extraordinary woman? Is it her quiet sacrifice for the love of her youth, or her steely courage in the face of cruel criticisms about her appearance? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If this video touched your heart, don't forget to give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future inspiring stories. Thank you, and see you next time.